Hello.
No.
Okay. Thought I didn't have any sound.
Yeah, I know. I did too.
No, we're all muted.
Yeah.
We figured if we were quiet, maybe Leo'd go away.
Oh, if it were only so easy.
Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Who wish, join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Don't think we have any agenda adjustments. Does anybody have a request for an agenda adjustment? Okay, We'll go ahead with the agenda as it stands. First up, we have minutes from the meeting of December 1st. I would make a motion to approve the minutes from December 1st as presented. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussions or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Aaron?
Aye.
I can't remember the order we go in at this point.
Jake.
Leo, I think you're next. Jake is next. Jake is next. Jake?
Aye.
Leo?
Been that long, Brian. Aye.
I know, 3 whole weeks without a board meeting. I'm
3 weeks and we need to be retrained.
Mark?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Next up, I would make a motion to approve the minutes from the December 8th meeting. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, any discussion or comments? All right, we'll go ahead and vote. Aaron?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Leo?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Don't see any warrants on the agenda. Do we have a list?
Yes, you want me to read them off? They're in the folder.
Okay,
They are payroll warrants 12 and 13, main PERS for November and December, warrants 12 and 13, bond warrant 27, and ban warrant 4.
I would make a motion to approve the warrants that Meredith just read. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? We'll go ahead and vote. Aaron?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Leo?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. And next up is public comment. And I'm hearing an echo. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but you may recall, Meredith, is your mic on? There we go. It's sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But for those of you who were here at our last board meeting, we had a little too much excitement during public comment. And often as a shorthand, I just kind of jump into public comment, but I thought it would be a good time to just refresh the rules and expectations around public comment. Although it looks like almost everybody I see here I recognize as a regular, but still I'll go ahead and do that for the record. So we have policy BEDH, governing public comment. I think probably 2 key points that arise out of that is this is a public meeting, which has a pretty long standing tradition in New England, arguably probably going back before European settlers arrived. And certainly a distinguished tradition, so we have pretty high expectations around decorum. It's great to disagree, it's a great to make your points, but having a level of civility and respect is absolutely expected during public comment. And the other thing that derives from it being a public meeting is this is not social media. There's no right to have a code name or handle or anonymity. It's expected, and in fact, it's in the policy that all public comments need to start with identifying yourself. And the only other thing I would add is we have a separate policy on complaints. So generally, if you want to complain about a particular or make comments about a particular person or situation, you should follow the complaint policy. At the end of that policy, after trying to resolve things with teacher, principal, superintendent, there is an option for the board, but the board option requires advance notice so we can be prepared to have an appropriate discussion. On the other hand, if you want to describe a situation in general, draw conclusions from that situation about policy, that's obviously welcome. I think I've covered the main points in general about public comment. The other issue that arises is chat, so it's worth briefly mentioning chat. First point about chat, the law that allows us to meet as an electronic format, as we're doing right now, a remote format, is specifically focused on the verbal or oral. Speaking and hearing people is the requirement. That's the meeting of public record. Obviously, we're happy to make accommodations for ADA if there's a need. That's on the agenda to access that. But barring the need for those accommodations, it's expected that everything is verbal. That is the meeting of public record. Most towns and school boards do not actually enable the chat function. We've been going 9 months with only one problem, so I'm happy to keep chat going for now. But you should recognize that it's not in any way a matter of public record. And there's really no guarantee, not out of ill will, but just the fact that board members have a lot going on, just focusing on the spoken record, that the board will be able to respond to chat. And I guess the slightly related point is questions. There's nothing in the policy that prohibits questions, but it's often not the most effective way to ask anything except for a short factual question. Longer questions are probably better addressed in email or in person or phone, and we're happy to answer those in detail, oftentimes with research in advance. So I think that covers the points. I think probably 95% of you all know those points, but just wanted to put those back out in the record. If I see a meeting where there's a lot of strangers or people who haven't been to meetings, I may reiterate those points, but I think those are all clear. That said, I love public comment. The board loves public comment. We're here to serve the public, and it's very helpful to hear what people think, probably most especially when people disagree. So none of that is intended to stifle appropriate public comment. I love comment of any form, agreeing or disagreeing. So floor is now open for public comment. Oh, we have to have one after all that. I'm kidding. We don't have to have one. Does anybody want to speak? Okay, I'm not seeing anything tonight. We'll go ahead and proceed to acknowledgements. Aaron, you want to start?
Yeah, I would just like to acknowledge the teachers and the staff who are having to come back now after break. And I know it's really hard to get back into those routines and then get everybody on the same page again. So thanks a lot for all the effort you're putting in this week.
Thanks, Jake.
I have nothing at this time.
Leo?
Maybe this is just raising up Kristen Briggs's comment from her report, but I would acknowledge the ASA PTO and Jason Coleman from Jersey Subs for feeding the staff on one day last week. So it's, I guess, particularly Jason Coleman, who's a small business who I'm sure is struggling like most. So I think that's worthy acknowledgement to acknowledge him coming forward at this time. So.
Thank you. Mark?
I have nothing at this time.
I'll just say ditto to everything. Meredith, anything you have?
Yes, I have two that I want to highlight tonight. One, I put in your folder the notification that we received a grant. Shauna Goodall applied for a grant through the Maine Teacher of the Year Association and was funded for the We Got This book club funding, and she received $10 to continue the with a second book, furthering the book study that we've been doing on racial equity. And so when I acknowledge both the donation from the Maine Teachers of the Year Association and Shauna's efforts to secure this grant. And it's of the value that we just do a public acknowledgement. The value is $200 of this donation. Secondly, I also want to acknowledge Rebecca Cross. Rebecca's our adult education director. Over break, she emailed me to let me know that we had successfully administered our first 2 HiSET tests here in RSU 26. Previously, we've relied on our partnership to have individuals go over to Old Town to take the HiSET tests, and through CRF funding, she was able to secure some additional technology and have the license set up so that we can also administer those here in district. And she had 2 students take the test over break and pass successfully, I would note. So that's just a great expansion of our offerings in the adult ed program during this time. And I wanted to acknowledge both her efforts and the fact that that's available here in RSG 26 now. And that's all.
Hey, Meredith, what is that test? I'm sorry. And could you explain what it is?
Sure,
don't know.
I apologize. HiSET testing is like,
is it HiSET, HISET?
Yes. So it stands for high school equivalency test. So
Okay.
it's like passing GED.
Is it like what used to be the GED? Now it's high set?
Right. It's a different,
okay.
well, GED still exists, but this
Oh.
is what I think is used maybe even more commonly now.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, and our adult ed programs typically do offer this as a gateway for students to continue on. And so we just haven't been able to offer it in RSU 26 until recently.
Oh, thank you.
Any acknowledgements we missed? Okay, next up we have reports. It's been a while, so it can be boring and not mix it up. We'll just start with Kristen.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Yes, I have to say the first 2 days back, I thought were going to be a little hectic, and we were prepared, and getting back in the swing of things is always tricky, especially after a longer break. But I will say the kids were great. We were all pretty tired yesterday afternoon when we the last little one left. But today we got right back into the swing of things. So things are going well, still hectic, but they're going well. So I'll just quickly go over what was in my board report. As usual, our student council is busy at ASA. Currently, they're working on a few different projects. One of them is the Crayon Initiative, which I had not heard of. So it was really neat. You can actually Google it. They take used crayons or crayons that are small, and they recycle them into crayons that they give to children in hospitals. So it's a great charity to work with. They also are collecting pull tabs for the Ronald McDonald House. And you can look that up too. That's another fantastic, I'm sure everybody knows about it, but that's another fantastic charity as well. And the last thing that the student council is working on is they're continuing to collect clothing for anyone that needs them. And it's been super helpful, and they're continuing to do that. And I talked a little bit about how the ASA staff is absolutely amazing. They took everything in stride the last couple months. There's the traditions that have always been done, and they took what they could do. And it's just, I'm so fortunate to be there. One of the great things that I got to see was Kim Oldenburg did balloons over ASA, and her class literally did a parade of balloons around ASA, and they had music, and it was amazing. And I know that a lot of classrooms got outside and got to see it, and everybody was socially distanced, but it was fantastic to see that. We've had other, various celebrations that they've just made work. So, bravo to the ASA staff for sure. And the ASA PTO continues to just floor me as well. I'm so lucky to have them as well. They pulled off the Holiday Craft Fair just amazingly, and they were so generous in what they had out for the kids, and watching the little ones shop for their families was so cool. And some of the little ones were like, but I know that my brother would like this pink wand. I don't understand. So it was great to actually have conversations about, do you really think you would love that? Because I think maybe you would love that. But it was fun. And a lot of them really can remember, especially the older ones. The kiddos could say, well, I remember last year I bought this for my dad, so I'll get this instead this year. So it was great. I have not witnessed that. So that was so fun to be a part of. Mrs. Earhart did a tremendous job with helping out ASA families again this year. So thank you to Mrs. Earhart. Thank you to JMG and Kelsey Wielden and the school counselors from all the buildings. I know that it was really a big joint effort this year, and very much appreciated. And I just talked a little bit about parent-teacher conferences. We did it very differently this year. Our last one was right before Thanksgiving, and I haven't given a board report, I don't think, since then. So that was interesting to do those on Google Meet. I had very positive feedback from both parents and teachers, so that was great to make that work as well. We are wrapping up our NWEA testing this week. There have been some challenges with quarantining to try to make sure that everybody gets assessed as much as we possibly can. So that should be completed this week. We've also started our budget process. We're beginning to collect budgets. And finally, just real quick, I know that Leo spoke about this, but to have that Tuesday before we left for vacation and to know you didn't have to pack a lunch and that there was going to be an amazing sandwich there with other little treats waiting for you was just, you woke up that morning and you came into work and you were like, this is so cool. So just to see just see all those subs and then to taste all those subs, they were fantastic. So between the PTO and Jason Coleman, we can't thank either one of them enough. So yeah, it's been a busy month or so at ASA.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, move on to the middle school. Richard?
Okay, good to be back, everyone. And I want to echo what Kristen said about the first day. Staff and students seemed eager to get back into the routine. And I know I can speak for myself. It was a restful break, but nice to get back into a routine. I want to start off in my report. I like sort of two acknowledgments. The OMS and OHS guidance staff organized sort of a community benefit drive, like in the weeks before the holiday, and I can report out that from OMS specifically, 23 families, students and families benefited from food donations, gifts, and other acts of kindness, and even delivery of these items to home. So 23 OMS students benefited. But again, I want to note that it was really a joint effort between OMS and OHS guidance that kind of made this happen, but it involved a lot of people. So anyways, I think a lot of families were appreciative of those efforts, and I know I am as well. Also, our small but growing parent group, and I want to acknowledge particularly Sharon Stoner and Aaron. Aaron, you're here tonight. Aaron Ellis, as kind of two of our main organizers. But in the week before the holidays, they brought in donuts from Frank's Bakery and coffee and other holiday treats and some healthy snacks too, like a lot of fruit and oranges, etc. But so that was nice and well appreciated by the staff. And they did that the week before the holidays. But I just want to note that it's about once a month they show up with things to kind of help brighten our day. So very much appreciated all around. Thank you very much. I wanted to moving on to the academic learning, curriculum instruction assessment updates. Over the last 3 weeks, like starting December 14th, December 21st, and January 4th, I've been notifying families via our school messenger system and the school parent newsletter about plans for Q3, and possibly hopefully bringing 8th grade back and how that impacts. So we're kind of been rolling out information to families about what is known at the present time. And as we look optimistically toward the start of third quarter and bringing 8th grade back, full time. And just to put that in perspective, January 25th would be our kind of hopeful start date. So and I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to keep families informed so that they can plan ahead with information as it's known on that. So I guess I'll leave that where it is for now. I'm not going to read the names, but I wanted to give the board a sample of professional development that's happening among staff this year. And on my report, I listed a number of staff members who have been participating in professional development. And you can see the variety and the breadth of things that people are doing. And it's impressive. And I can note that this is not a complete list. I didn't want to leave anyone out, but it's a good sampling of some of the things that people are doing. And, I worried about that in August and September about how we're going to get PD to people, but people are finding opportunities, and everything's virtual, of course, and really stepping up. And I don't think there's any really dip in participation in professional development this year. So that's impressive. This past week, we added one new sixth grader, so happy to note that student has started yesterday and is assimilating good. So that student is not reflected in the numbers because I got the board report out before they enrolled. But enrollment's doing well. And I gave a summary of, we have 17 students attending full remote. When I talk about NWA scores in a minute, we had some challenges around testing the full remote students. We got some of them, but we didn't get all of them. So again, I'll talk more about that in a minute. And let's see. So I'll just, I won't read those numbers to you, and I'll just move on to the NWA score. So we were able to wrap up, for the most part, NWA testing the week before the holidays. We still have a small number that we're trying to pick off, and Meredith Diamond was able to keep the testing window open, for ASA in the high school, and so we're able to take advantage of that extended window and pick off those students who didn't complete testing. So at grade 8, we are missing 9 students who didn't test. And again, I think my attendance numbers show we have 7 students that attend full remote. We even arranged for a number of them to come in, like at an alternate time, and take the test. But we're missing 9 8th graders in our data set, 9 out of 61. 5 7th graders and only 3 6th graders in our data set. So I would say I'd like it to be a little higher, but pretty good participation on the NWA assessment. I included the scores, just the achievement scores on my board report. But I'm also looking at growth scores. I have the charts here, and the staff and I are kind of starting to dig into that, and some very impressive growth scores in addition to achievement scores. And so you get to see that. But just to give you a flavor, there's 5 categories. There's low, average, high average, and high. Okay, so 5 categories of where you might land on a scale. And in reading, we're very blessed with high achieving students at OMS. So in reading, 8th grade, students who scored average, high average, or high, okay, in those 3 categories, the top 3 categories on the score. 84% of our students at 8th grade scored in one of those 3 categories, 84%, okay, in reading. 88% at 7th grade scored in those 3 categories, and 88% at 6th grade scored in either the high average or average range. So that's pretty impressive. And in mathematics, slightly lower, but still very solid. 8th grade, 80% of our students scored in those 3 categories, 85% at grade 7, and 81% at grade 6. So I'm very impressed with the overall achievement of our students, and the growth scores are pretty impressive as well. And we've had a number of students score in like the 260th RIT score, like a small handful, very impressive scores, very high. It's as high as I've seen in 20 years, so very, very impressive. And that's what I have for now.
Thanks, Richard. I had one question. I mean, by all means, kudos to the teachers and especially the students for the test scores. And I know this is very preliminary, but honestly, the single biggest thing I'm looking to the NWEAs for this year, I mean, it's, I know we rake in everything, and maybe this is just too preliminary to answer, but any deficits from the COVID situation, i.e. not normal year-to-year kinds of deficits that are nationally, math scores are down more than reading scores, and lower income and struggling students are lower than the opposite category. But is anything jumping out of these from the abnormal kind of one-year COVID deficits?
Yes and no. And what I mean by that is I was pleasantly surprised. Like I anticipated more of a negative impact on our scores going in. And so when I'm looking at the numbers, I'm very impressed with how well our students perform overall, right? But I think what we need to dive into more, and again, I have the preliminary data here, but the growth, we need to focus on student growth, right? And I think many of our students who struggle in school didn't make the growth that I would like, and so I think that's been a struggle for me in my career for many years. In how do we help our low achieving students make appropriate gains? So I think we have some work to do around that area. Like that's one thing that jumps out right off the bat. Like, I think our low achieving students didn't make the gains that I would have liked. And I think our high achieving students, it's often more challenging because they have less room to grow because they're already at the top, right? And what can we do to continue to enhance opportunities for very high achieving students? So kind of the students on both ends of the spectrum is what I want to dig into and find out what we can do better to serve those students.
Great,
One of
thank
the
you.
things that I was going to mention that, high school's testing next week, ACE is still finishing up. We typically do a data workshop and, we'll dig deeper into some of the, very areas you're asking about, Brian, and what Richard's referencing on the growth charts. And so Meredith D is going to help us with that, and we'll need to probably decide at what point we'll be ready to do that. I want to say it's probably not January 19th because the high school will still be wrapping up probably then. So I'm thinking early February will be the time we'll be ready to do that. So more to come.
Hey, can I ask a question on how this works? Is average and high average or high, are those all relative numbers or are those relative marks?
Yeah. Average above the 40th, approximately around the 40th percentile or above.
Nationally, right?
It's a nationally normed test.
41st
Okay.
percentile and above.
So 50 percentile is literally the middle of all, and so they're kind of ranked, normed against that.
I mean, to boil it down, 85% of our students are above the 40th percentile nationally. So I mean, clearly that's a good result.
That's very good. And like Meredith noted, we'll be able to share out, like I have data on how many students are in like the high category or the high average category. Like we can, there's a lot of information to share out, but I just wanted to give you a sampling of kind of where we are.
Oh, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. I also recognize this is very early days and look forward to the day workshop, but I appreciate the sneak preview too.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else for Richard?
I have one question. If the state moves forward with NWEAs as the mandatory test for spring, and maybe they've made some movement on that or not, I'm not sure. But if they do that, Richard, do we have any plan in place to try and deal with these students who did not take the test this time around to maybe make it more likely that they'll take it in the spring version?
Yeah, absolutely. Like testing, like I said, we mostly completed the week before break, but we're still testing. Like we've been testing students this week, right? So we're continuing to try to find ways to get all students to complete the test. I have a very small number of families who like, no way am I coming in because, but it's a very small number.
And just to kind of add on to that, Meredith, you may know more. We haven't heard any official news yet about the status of the contract negotiations with the vendor they're working with, but they have said that they aren't going to hold the typical 95% testing threshold this year. However, I think we want to test as many students as we can to get that information. And I think this round, we're learning a lot about, how we can do that in this, current frame we're in. And, also, I don't think we've experimented yet with any of the remote testing options. Have we, Meredith?
So I met just before break with 2 teachers at ASA who wanted to explore the remote administration of the tests, specifically actually special ed students, Lisa, who the discussion involved conversation about making sure that we were able to provide those same accommodations testing remotely. And so that is sort of a micro iteration of testing as we have done it. We now have 2 folks at ASA who either, I'm not sure if the test has happened yet or not, but who I know are planning to administer remotely. And so remote administration is an option, and it has been an option since the beginning of the year. However, the cumbersomeness of it and some of the inequities that could be exacerbated by remote administration are rendered us more inclined to try to get as many kiddos in the building as we could to do it. But to cross us over from this threshold, right? So Richard's, what is it, 16 that we have, or 17?
I just wanted, Meredith, sorry to cut you off. Why don't you finish? I'm sorry. And all.
That's okay. So we do have that option, and we can explore that option. One of the beauties of the fact that the state has not come down on this definitively yet, it means that the timeline is sort of stretching for what the end of this initial winter administration is going to be. And that will enable us to take advantage of that to potentially get as close to 100% participation in this round as possible in a way that could lay the groundwork for some solid comparative data in the spring.
And Mark, just to put it in perspective, I had, like at the time of this report, I had 17 students who did, like school-wide, who did not test. And I know yesterday and today, we had another 3 or 4 completed. So we're down to like 13 or 14 students school-wide that didn't finish. Pretty good numbers.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to keep stretching and looking into options, but personally, in the middle of COVID, I think that's a pretty impressive participation rate.
Meredith, I didn't quite hear. Did you say that the state is still requiring 95%, that they're not letting up on that, or that they are letting up?
We asked the question of the commissioner in a regional meeting, and at that point she said they plan to relax that standard.
Oh, relax.
It's all dependent on, though, what they're allowed to do from the federal government in their waiver application. So I'm sure that I don't think that's necessarily been approved yet, but that's their goal.
Okay, thanks. I didn't hear that correctly, properly. Thank you.
Another piece of that is the anticipation of the awarding of waiver for accountability for this year. So that in some ways, works alongside that, whatever the relaxing of that 95% threshold looks like, it will, liberate, because there are so many districts for whom this is going to be an entirely new platform, and who are, going to struggle, I think, significantly to even come close to the numbers that we already have in terms of participation. And so for the time being, I think that we have the flexibility to, do the best we can, get as close to 100% as we can without any sort of punitive measure being attached to what our threshold ends up being.
Anything else? You can see, Richard, you got us all salivating just throwing out some NWEA scores. So this board likes that, I guess. I don't know if that's common, but yep, thanks for that. And thanks for your work on making this happen, Meredith. All right, we'll move on to Reg.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Happy New Year. I do want to start off and just recognize, gosh, our student body and a lot of staff members who really made the best that kind of holiday period after Thanksgiving and before Christmas, where Had a door decorating contest. It was really had a high level of participation. Students hanging holiday lights in the corridors that really livened the place up. And so I really appreciate the effort to, not have everything be just pandemic. And so I appreciate those efforts. And then also I want to recognize our guidance staff and office staff and Key Club and Student Council and JMG for different drives that each group did. There was a food drive and delivered to families right before vacation. JMG put together a really cool, I think they called it an angel tree through Amazon, where people could go online and purchase gifts that would be delivered here to the high school. So that toy drive was very successful. There's a toiletry drive by Student Council, Key Club collecting paper towels for Ronald McDonald House. So really proud of the generosity and the spirit of giving that by a large number of people in that holiday period. So kudos to those guys. Our National Honor Society members, we have 18 new members that will be inducted in 2 weeks, on Wednesday, January 20th. It'll be, again, virtual via Zoom. All are invited to that. I do want to congratulate our November students of the month. Our 9th grade student was Bera Aljul. She's an Orono resident. 10th grade was Madeline Smith from Orono. 11th grade was Teddy Fine from Hamden. And 12th grade was Sierra Brown from Greenbush. We held our second quarter parent-teacher conferences, which was different this year. We usually hold them all at the same time, but because we had maroon classes first quarter, we did a round of conferences in the first quarter. Then our switch over to white classes for the second quarter, we had a second round of conferences on December 15th. And both times were really well attended and have gotten a lot of positive feedback. So I think we're on to something that we might want to hang on to for the future with these virtual conferences. Speaking of virtual, Step Up Day would typically be February 3rd, but no high school in the area is, inviting 100 local 8th graders into the buildings. And so Step Up Day is going to look different. We're going to have a virtual open house for new students on the evening of Wednesday, February 3rd. We're going to do our 8th grade visits where we head out to each 8th grade, but those will be virtual. So those are still happening. We'll probably have another March virtual open house. And then by the end of March, we'll have more personalized informational meetings for how to enroll and sign up for classes hosted by guidance. So, and they're also, the guidance office is also developing a specific web page as a go-to kind of repository for information for new students. So big change, but we're rolling with it like we have. So speaking of maroon and white, our second quarter ends in 2 weeks from Friday on the 22nd. And so we'll roll back to maroon classes for the third quarter. And that also begins our second semester. So either students will be back with teachers they had in the first quarter to continue year-long classes, or they'll have new teachers for traditional semester-long classes. And we've also, believe it or not, begun planning for the fall of 21 with developing a timeline for course signups, updating our course catalog. And so we're in the beginning phases of that. Professional development, teachers have really found the additional in-service days, the early release and the full days. We've had a couple so far using it for just instructional planning. And it really, I feel like it's been a real relief for teachers to have that time to plan. So I know next week's will be devoted to getting ready for the third quarter switch over to new classes. And so it's good timing for that one. Technology committee has done a great job just talking about how do we train teachers on all this new technology. I mean, gosh, everything from new MacBooks to new iPads to Apple Pencils to these brand new, really cool 75-inch interactive displays that are really user-friendly. So teachers are taking advantage of that. Then for facilities, I did want to mention, those were delivered. I think we got around 13, it might be 15 but in the teens of these cart-mounted flat screen interactive displays that were delivered to classrooms and really helped teachers in their remote instruction. And then also during, right before break, we installed these hallway dividers in the hallway, these temporary dividers, just to help with traffic flow. That was one of the areas that it's a bit of a pinch point during class changes. That's the one time of the day when we have more students in the building. That's the time of the day where it's students are together. They can be close to each other, and so we've put in these dividers that will help the separation, keep the traffic flowing in the right direction. And they actually look really cool. They were manufactured by a local company in Herman. We used the Corona relief funds for that. And it really was a win-win all around. And then finally, talking about NWEAs, had originally been planned for December, but our full remote days in December, we bumped these into January. So we're going to administer these next week. And I will say it's a bit of a logistical challenge given our cohorts and our maroon and white schedule. Not every kid has English 9 second quarter. And so, but we have a plan that we're going to get about 80% of these 9th graders. The other 20% are full remote. So we're going to get as many of those tested as well. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Just got one quick question, Reg. In these virtual open houses that you're planning, are you anticipating using any of the presentation data for the new facilities to show potential students and their parents?
Oh, God, absolutely. The mock-up drawings that we got back, I think right around Thanksgiving, of the theater and the cafeteria, those are great. I mean, those really give a great visual of how that's going to look. So yeah, that'll absolutely be top of the deck. So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I mean, in past years, there's been a lot of involvement from teachers and students. I know it's remote, but I assume that's going forward somehow too.
Yeah. Yep. We'll have teachers. We'll have a group of students as well. A panel. They'll all have their individual screens. But yeah, the nice thing is, another thing that's come out of this is how easy it is to pull off meetings. Everyone can be in 10 different locations. So we'll have a good turnout of teachers, we'll have a good turnout of students, and hopefully a good turnout of prospects.
Challenging year for doing that, but things have gone great the last couple of years. So I appreciate your digging in on that again.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll go on to the superintendent report.
I have 2 items to report on that are kind of apart from several things on the agenda that we'll talk through down the agenda a bit. One is to just let you know that the audit is close to being completed, the audit report, and they tell us they can be prepared to be at our next regularly scheduled meeting. So they'll be here on the 19th of January to give their report. So we'll look forward to hearing that. And also wanted to, it's kind of related to our discussion item A around the COVID update, but really it's a bit different. I want to talk about the relief funds, the CRF money, and just give you an update on what's happening with that. So as you know, we've had 5 buckets, I will say, of coronavirus relief funds of some sort. We had, the first one was the CARES money, and that we still have, that was the one that was good through 2022. We received that first, and then we received CRF1 and CRF2, which both had an expiration date of December 30. We received the child care CRF, also expired December 30, and adult ed CRF, which expired December 30. The new relief bill, we're getting kind of mixed messages a bit about exactly what ended up in that. But it looks like there was an extension of CRF funds in some fashion. But what the Department of Ed is saying is they have to apply or seek permission or authorization to continue to use those. So we're not really sure what that means and what's going to happen if there's any money left over. We have about, I think about 22,000 left over from our CRF 1 and 2. We could certainly put it to use if they'll let us. So, we're waiting to see on those. The childcare, the same, we're waiting to see, although the University of Maine and the town and we all decided that we really could not continue at this point unless we had a different facility to use, absent having, some funds to continue with, because the building we were in was quite expensive for the enrollment we had in the program. And so it just wasn't it wasn't feasible to continue there. So we'll see what happens if they open up that money. We'll certainly look at what possibilities we can come up with. And then adult ed, we pretty much used all of that. It was a very small amount of money. With the new relief bill, though, there is, we're told, more money. I think you probably read earmarked for education. One thing that I read from AASA, the Association for Superintendents, the national organization, said that it looked like it would be, I think it said roughly 4 times what CARES was. CARES was really smaller in comparison to CRF. So we got 94,000 with CARES. So if it's 4 times that, that's pretty significant. But that memo they sent us was, I think, before some things got adjusted. So again, we're waiting on information, but we've shifted over and begun using the CARES money now to pick up some of the salaries that we had been paying with CRF1. So if we get this new relief money, or if CRF gets extended, we'll make some decisions based on what ends up coming our way. Do you have any questions about that?
I was just going to ask, what's left over of funds for the childcare bucket?
There was 58,000 left in that.
And that, if that gets
we
extended,
had less enrollment than we planned for.
And if that gets extended, do you assume that it's still just it has to be childcare, or could it fall into a CRF bucket? Don't know.
I think that if I don't really know.
Yeah.
I mean, it would just be pure speculation for me to even answer either way. So I don't know what they're going to do with that. Because the state received, all of their CRF money, and then they decided to create this childcare initiative with part of it. So, as they look at what's left at this point at the end of December 30, they may decide to wrap it all up and do something else with it. So I don't know.
Thank you.
Sorry, I know.
This
is more not known than known at this point.
Yeah, no, it's not you at all. And is it, do you think that the state would, I guess it's so hypothetical, I won't even ask it, but if we get more CARES money, if we get 400,000 in CARES money, is the state gonna use that for reuse our allocation for that, I wonder, or hard telling?
Yeah, the money does have those kind of federal strings tied to it. So I don't think they could use it in lieu of state allocation, state subsidy, because you have to use it, there's a list of, at least the last I saw, of what was allowable use. and it was a lot like CARES. So, you know, I think that that will come straight to districts, you know, following the federal legislation. So I really don't think it would. The CRF was, I mean, lucky for us in the state of Maine, our state government prioritized education to be a use for that money. Other states didn't use it for education. So CRF was, you know, the money given direct to states for states to decide how to use. This money is different. It's like CARES, where it's directly to, you know, departments of ed and allocations based on your Title I eligibility kind of calculations.
Thank you.
But, you know, as Reg said in his report, and we've talked about it in previous meetings, there was just a massive undertaking to, you know, try to be good stewards of the money and buy the things that were meeting needs that were identified. So I feel really good about what we were able to acquire and do with that money. And, you know, we've picked up, like we're continuing the food service delivery. And for right now, we're just going to pay that individual. And, you know, I think there'll be something coming through. We can pick up that salary as soon as we know more about how this is going to look. I think that's the only one that was kind of outside of what we had already talked about. So they're a food service employee, and it's, you know, something that I know is a priority of the board, and we're going to continue to do that for now until we find out how we can just fold that under this federal money. Everything else, I was going to mention the data workshop, but I already mentioned that. Everything else is kind of folded into some of the other agenda items. So shall we roll into discussion?
Yeah, so not much of a transition, but on to the COVID update and discussion.
I just wanted to indicate or acknowledge or reference actually the designation came out last Thursday. The closely monitored green status. Brian shared some data with the board members, the same kind of data we've been looking at, usually monthly. And I don't think it's any secret what the numbers look like and what's probably contributing to our closely monitored status. We expect, the DOE said we'll get another update on the 15th of January. So it looks like they're going back to 2-week windows for updating in the fall, or leading up to, at least when we went home for the holiday, they were doing it weekly. So we're on a 2-week rotation now. And really our looking at next steps coincides with that time period in terms of what we are suggesting for making some final decisions or about a next step for the high school, for OMS, and for ASA. And so I think, you know, the 15th will be an important day to know, are we still green or are we moving into yellow at that point? You know, when we were talking several meetings ago, we determined, you know, this is our yellow plan. That's a pretty, you know, well-established plan now. We know what that is. We seem to be vacillating between what's the hardest thing to figure out. You know, now the hardest thing to figure out is, what does the next green step look like for us in terms of thinking about some of the equity considerations that Mark's been talking about, and what's the timing of that. So, you know, in general, what we have been looking at is making a change at the new quarter start on January 25th. And I know at ASA that's not a very meaningful date because ASA follows trimesters, but it marks a midpoint in the year for our school year. And certainly at the middle school and high school, it's significant in terms of class change time. So as Richard said, that plan has been, I think, probably the easiest to kind of identify what the next step might be there. And that remains the recommendation if we remain green, to have 8th grade come in, and 6th and 7th would go hybrid for the, next time. And then at the high school and at ASA, we really had more thinking to do. One of the things that all schools will need to do really is some surveying of families to know, how many families would come back if we are looking at extending a full-time option for a new group of students. We feel like waiting to do that until after we have the new rating on the 15th is pretty important for several reasons. If you look at our enrollment chart, I share this in the drive with board members. The full remote population has remained really stable at ASA and OMS, as you can see, looking back over kind of the last 4 months or the last 3 months up to now. But at the high school, it's really increased dramatically since December. And I think when we went remote in December, that kind of a number of families at that point decided, well, we're just going to stay this way through the end of the quarter. So we saw a pretty big uptick at that point in December. And so we feel like getting through December or January 17th, particularly at the high school, is pretty important to feel like if we survey, we're getting what feels like data that would remain true about people's preferences. I think a number of people that we've heard from that made that shift in either December or heading into, this return to school indicated they wanted to wait until after the holiday to have things hopefully settle down or to see what the situation would be before they returned or made decisions about returning. So in talking with Reg, he really feels like the high school is poised to make pretty quick pivots in response to, responses that we get from students and families. So I think the high school plan is still quite, I guess, in draft stage, because when you look at the numbers now, we have 117 students in full remote, and of the students we have who are eligible, the 12th grade is eligible to attend full in person, less than half of them are. So, or about half, it's little less than half. Looking at survey data to figure out what the best next step might be for the high school is probably going to drive our decision making there. Also, though, looking at the high school as, that's the place where we've had the highest prevalence of cases so far. It's just a fact. I think that's a part of our consideration. I mean, when I look around at how we compare to other places in terms of prevalence, certainly I feel very fortunate, but all cases except for one have been at the high school, and with the exception of the bus case. So that alone leads me to want to take an extra bit of caution as we consider next steps for the high school. For ASA, I sent you a kind of a summary of what the thinking is around ASA. We talked last time, Kristen shared 3 different scenarios that came from collaborating with staff about what next steps might look like. As you know, currently at ASA, we have pre-K through 3rd grade attending 5 days a week, and 4th and 5th grade are attending under hybrid. And then we have the full remote option. And you can see in that model on this sheet kind of what that looks like in terms of total numbers of students in the building. And so we have, between 203 and 218 students in the building on those hybrid days. And then on the Wednesday, when 4th and 5th are full remote, you see we have the 175. Option A that you see here is of the 3 that Kristen mentioned at the last meeting. It's the one that is the kind of leading choice right now from those three choices. It's one that takes our youngest learners, the learners that we prioritized from, last summer when we were deliberating about students who would have most difficulty engaging meaningfully with remote learning, that pre-K to 2 population, and keeping them intact in full-time instruction, especially given the class sizes we've been able to maintain there and the distancing that we've been able to maintain in those classrooms, keeping them in that full-time attendance model, and then taking grades 3 through 5 who, that after second grade, there's the kind of natural breaking point of 3rd through 5th grade. Students are beginning to be able to have some greater independence with engaging with remote learning. Admittedly, it's obviously different than what a high schooler can do with remote learning, or even a middle school student. But in looking at the ASA building, those students would certainly have more fluency with remote learning than our younger learners. And additionally, with those grades, those are the grades that have higher student-teacher ratios, higher class sizes. And so particularly in 3rd and 4th grade, definitely where you get down to 5 feet distance, in some places 4.5, and no, I think it's 5 feet, right, Kristen, in all places, that for those classrooms. So we're looking at having option A would be a 3-week rotation of 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, where we cluster them in 2 different rotation groups. If you see here, the suggestion would be that there's the rotation 1 group would be all of 5th grade plus one of the 4th grade classes would be in the first group, who would shift to full-time attendance, and the other group would shift to hybrid. And then after 3 weeks, they would swap. So beginning February 22nd, the 3rd grade students plus the other 2 4th grade classes would shift to full-time attendance, and then the other students would go hybrid. This would put us, the first 3-week rotation really gets to February vacation. The second 3-week rotation would start right after February vacation and go for 3 weeks. I think that's a point where I hope we'll be able to reevaluate where we are to, with the goal of hopefully being able to shift, potentially all students back into the building at that point, if that's feasible. But we have, this 3-week rotation model for the next 6 weeks, beginning the 25th, as a next step. So that's option A. Under option A, full-time attendance is 5 days per week. That's kind of a key differentiation between these models. With option B, this is one that came to us as a suggestion, and I think has merit. It's just a very different way of looking at this. I think it's taking, our youngest learners kind of to the, to the lowest, youngest grade levels, just having pre-K to 2 remain in that full-time 5-day-a-week attendance, but in trying to have more regular attendance for more days, for more grades. The model suggestion here is to have grades 1 through 5 shift to a 4-day per week in-person attendance, with 1 day being full remote, and that 1 day being different for each grade, so that the load in the building each day, is reduced by at least 1 grade level of numbers. You can see, in terms of the load on the building, that's actually a lower load on the building than we have now on Monday and Tuesday, actually. I think the key difference here is that it puts first and second graders in a remote framework for 1 day per week, which is definitely a change. And, it also adds those families now have a new kind of nuance of having to adjust to be able to accommodate their students at home for 1 day per week, which is a new element for those families. I think, when you look at the number of days, I think in the immediate future, option B gets 4th and 5th graders certainly with more attendance than they do under option A. Under option A, really, I think it provides more stability with our pre-K to 2 to be able to continue with the model they've had, and begins to take that kind of incremental next step with these students who have been under hybrid all year. So, these are 2 options. My preference right now is option A. And Kristen and I have talked about this. We both prefer option A. We both prefer everyone to be back, actually. But we feel like that's too large a step right now to take. And so we feel like option A is the least disruptive overall in terms of taking a next step that moves us forward. So we bring you kind of this for consideration and discussion. And I would also ask the principals if they had anything to add to that.
I don't think so, Meredith. Yeah, and I appreciate all of Meredith's help trying to work through this today. So, but thanks.
So questions, discussion, thoughts?
Meredith, I have a question. So what for ASA, it's a little bit different than the middle school and high school because the students aren't moving from classroom to classroom. So there's not as much of the hallway activity, and now they're eating their lunches in the classroom and things like that. So what's actually what are you looking at for loading and limiting factors of how many students you want to have in the building at once? I mean, I just feel like if you're going to have a full class of students any day of the week, what's sort of the difference there? Just so I understand.
Yeah, that's a great question, Erin. I think, in looking at times a day when we're coming and going, those are certainly times a day where you have lots of people moving at once. And I think also when we're moving to and from specials, those are times a day where, there's hallway traffic happening and we're coming and going, and we are a little limited with how we can use outdoor spaces with construction and now some snow. So I think it's those times a day, but certainly the podding at ASA affords us the ability to safely have more students in the building than I personally feel comfortable at the other 2 because of the movement and class changes and hallway traffic and such. So I think all along for me, it's been kind of wanting to take incremental steps grade by grade to get us to a point where we feel like we can, have the maximum number of students in the building that feels comfortable and safe. I don't know if Kristen has a different answer to that.
No, I don't.
Are there other times a day, Kristen, that you feel are pinch points or challenges?
Well, the only other thing that, I do worry about is lunchtime. They do eat in the classroom. So at that point they're unmasked. So you just, that's the only, that's really the time when I worry about the number of students within the classrooms and so forth.
This is Carissa Tilbury. I have a question about option A. This is reliance on equitable distribution of curriculum.
Carissa, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off. We have a public comment at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. And unfortunately, the board,
Okay.
This is literally the only time the board can talk to each other. So
Got
we
it.
use the time
All right.
because, no, you're welcome to post your comment in the chat section, and if we get a chance, we'll answer it, or I'd love to hear from you during the second public comment period. Thanks, sorry. But literally, this is the only time we can talk to each other by state law, so. I'll go, well, I'll just jump in. You know, this is obviously really hard. It's not quite Sophie's choice, but you're making hard decisions about kids and educations and parents' time. So I really appreciate that there's probably no good answer. And really, as I see it, option A and option B have different definitions of whatever you want to call it, equability or fairness or equalness or the problem, of course, is that concept is not a one-dimensional number, but it's multidimensional. And on the one hand, you have the number of days kids are getting opportunities to be in the school, which is very real and very important. And I think option B focuses on equalizing that going forward. But on the other hand, you have the fact that a first grader is developmentally extremely different from a fifth grader. And I think option A, there's no way to equilibrate across that because it's qualitative and complex, those differences from first to fifth grade. But option A is really kind of focusing, I think, on recognizing and addressing those differences. The amount that a first grader gets from being at home is very different from the amount that a fifth grader gets from being at home. Both of them obviously decrease from what they get from being in school, but still very different between first and fifth. And you know, conversely, to the extent we consider parents in this, the amount that a parent working from home with a fifth grader can get done at home versus the amount that a parent working from home with a first grader that's remote can get done is different. So, you know, there's no right or wrong way to choose those choices, but I personally am pretty comfortable supporting and would probably pick the same option that the administrators have with option A. I just really think the difference, unlike the high school where there's clearly differences between a ninth and a 12th grader, elementary school, those differences are just so big in a first grader and a fourth or fifth grader. That I think, you know, again, there's no right answer. They're very hard choices, but I'm very comfortable supporting what the administration's recommending with option A. And, you know, quite frankly, I hope we even get to the point where we can put this into place. If you had to look at the trend lines today, it's all kind of a moot discussion, but that's where I'm at. But I think probably Meredith wants to hear from other people on the board as well.
I'll just jump in and start off in the interest of full disclosure. Option B is a proposal that I put forward. So it's not coming from Meredith or any of the administration. This is something that I floated to Meredith and Brian a couple of weeks ago. The reason I would prefer, I mean, I also should say before I start, my strong preference would be to be a full return for all students. And I don't think we're that far away from there, assuming the case numbers don't take a continued dive for the worst after the holiday break, right? So we just don't know that yet. So with that all being said, I guess the reason why I'd prefer option B to option A is that I agree with Brian that it is kind of a Sophie's choice situation. Neither one of these are great options, but and also it has to be acknowledged that there are differences between a first grader and a fifth grader, as Brian pointed out. On the other hand, we know, you know, from studies that are being published now, we know that the learning deficits that our students are, not our students here in Orono, but just our students in the United States are facing as a result of COVID changes to education are huge. And we also know that those deficits are, it appears, larger for younger students, elementary school students, than they are for middle and high school students, although they're there for everybody, right? And that's regardless of how well remote education is being delivered. Those deficits are there and they're real. And it's starting to look like it's going to take us years to dig out of that. That being said, I don't know that I could justify an option where one group of students gets a full year of full-time in-person learning, where another group of students gets less than a third of full-time in-person learning. And I can't support doing that. So for me, option B, decreases that gap a little bit in terms of the equality of opportunity for in-person learning. Again, my first priority would be to a full-time return for all 6 or 7 of our grade levels at ASA. But if that's not an option on the table, and it's option A and option B, my preference is for option B, recognizing that neither one of those is a great choice.
I'll weigh in, I guess. I agree that neither option is ideal or perfect or what we'd want. I'm going to lean with option A only because I cannot, I just think we need to prioritize the younger age groups, and I can't see first and second graders even having a day of remote learning. You're right, Mark, it's not fair. It's not, but we have to make hard decisions, and I just think that the younger kids need to be prioritized in it.
I'll jump in. I have some questions also, but I do definitely lean towards option A as well. I do have a question. If a family chooses to stay in hybrid, if they're in option A, is that still an option? Because I know I've heard some people talking about third grade, I guess, wondering if that, I guess hybrid went away for third grade, I think, right? So
right. So it would go away.
Option A, hybrid would go away as well.
During the 3 weeks when they're full in person,
Yeah.
it would be full in person.
So if someone normally would have been coming Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, and off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they can't keep doing that.
Right.
Okay.
At ASA, we haven't continued with the 3 pathways. You're
okay.
a remote teacher, or you're doing either, if your grade level is in hybrid or if they're full in person, that's what you're doing. Like in first pre-K, K1, 2, 3, we don't offer hybrid. We're offering full in person.
Okay.
So a family that's, sorry, Leo, just to clarify further, a family that says I'll do hybrid but not full would do 3 weeks of hybrid, 3 weeks of remote, 3 weeks of hybrid, 3 weeks of remote. That would be the option on the table.
Okay. Gotcha.
We haven't discussed that. If you can opt to go full remote instead of coming into full in person, I don't have an answer for that. I tend to say, I would say no, because those are different teachers, and it would be pretty difficult, I think, to move back and forth across teachers like that. So,
so the choice would be remote, full remote.
Right.
Okay. With option B, I think the obvious issue is the younger kids now having to switch to remote. I do hear you, Mark. I hear your point. But I do think I just think that's problematic for many reasons. And the other thing, I don't know that, we mentioned, the load on the building, but I don't, it would seem that the load on the classrooms would, if it is problematic, it would still be problematic unless we were playing musical classrooms or something. So that sounds a little complicated to me as well. Not that anything can't be solved. But I would definitely lean towards option 1. I do have a question on middle school. I guess I wasn't aware that we were looking to go that switch to 8th grade coming back and 6th and 7th go on hybrid. Is that what I heard you say earlier?
Yes, that was what we presented back in December, on December 8th, and that continues to be the thinking about the plan.
Okay. That was presented as a plan or as an option, or because that definitely wasn't
a,
clear in my head. That doesn't mean too much.
It's what we presented as, the preferred, or the way forward we see. The challenge with that is the size of the 8th grade makes it difficult for us to have another class in the building right now if they're the ones full in person.
Is that because of transitions or is that because of classrooms?
both.
Because the same
Both.
question would, I guess, that I would see with the issue with option B of, is that, well, if we're doing it, no, that still seems like that would be a problem to me, but I won't.
In what way?
Because you can't, an eighth grader, we don't have more eighth grade teachers to spread out in different classrooms.
Well, we're
And
going to
the
use
sixth and
classrooms
seventh grade is still being used on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in hybrid, right?
Well, we can use smaller classrooms with smaller groups with 6th and 7th graders who are hybrid and shift our 8th graders into some larger spaces. Richard has some ideas because we have some large 8th grade classes about how to use space a little differently, bringing 8th graders back. Richard, I don't know if you could address that more specifically.
I would say you don't have to. I don't want to get wire. Sorry, I don't want to get down too much in the weeds. Can I ask on ASA, which you mentioned a couple grades where it'd be 4 or 5 feet, which are the grades that we're saying we have space issues?
Well, it's definitely 3rd and 4th grade. With 5th grade, it really depends on what happens with hybrid or with our full remote numbers at the end of the grading period where they have the option to come back, because there might be a swing at 5th grade that would take us into that 5 feet, but right now they would be at 6 feet if the kids who are full remote stay full remote. But 3rd and 4th are in the 5 feet range.
Okay. And just to back up, I guess I'm definitely, my first preference is that we bring all students back full time. So just to echo what Mark and Jake had both said is on that front. But I think that's it. That are all my thoughts on that. A would be the preferred option, I think.
And I think, this is a plan that is, if we remain green, if we're green on the 15th, for example, this is the plan that we see as the next step on the 25th. And if we go yellow, we've already talked about what that plan is.
Yeah, and can you just clarify on the yellow what happens to 3rd grade? Because I guess I was thinking that was going to remain like pre-K through 12, but I thought I've heard differently. So
yeah, they would go hybrid.
Isn't it would, for all the same reasons pre-K to 2, wouldn't it? That seems to me like it makes sense for 3 as well. But
yeah, it's the spacing issue that we want to keep grades at, if they're here full time with all the kids at the 6-foot spacing, and that's just not possible in 3rd grade.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would love to keep them here. I think in grades where, in 6th and 7th grade, for example, those are smaller grades, it's been easier to accommodate them together being full in person. It's the same reason at the high school, we really couldn't consider 9th grade and any other, or we really couldn't consider 9th grade back in November without some pretty serious kind of acrobatics to handle those numbers. 8th grade's kind of the same. 3rd grade, when we moved down to set 2 classrooms, it makes us tight with our space. So there's just certain grades where it's hard with our class sizes. Aaron, any thoughts on this to add in?
No, I mean, I don't know how, you guys have come up, all the data, what you're working with, and I don't. I mean, my gut reaction, I was gonna say, I'm actually with Mark and Leo and Jake, that I feel like at the elementary school, I would like to see, if things go well, to have all the kids back. I don't feel that way about the other schools, but at ASA, since they are potted, but I guess I would lean a little bit towards A then. So that's where I am.
Yeah.
I think Kristen and I, we feel the same way, actually. I think, that's what I indicated, but I think there's a step in between that helps us get there and feel comfortable with it. I'm hopeful that after 2 rotations that we can look at that as the next step. I think the next couple of weeks will tell us a lot about our pacing of more green planning. So that's kind of, I think, why we're thinking of the survey on the 16th or after the 15th for the high school. And then depending on what we decide for ASA, needing to do some surveying to find out what families will avail themselves of the opportunity to return on the plan we decide. So
Meredith, so for 3rd grade, we have 31 attending full in person. And is it 2 classrooms? So
yes,
that's 16 and 15,
Yeah.
16 and 15 per classroom.
right.
And we can't space 6 feet with 15 and 16 in a classroom in the 3rd grade.
Nope. Mm-mm.
Thanks.
So just so I'm clear, Meredith, under your thinking right now, that next step of possibly getting everybody back in is mid to late March at the earliest.
Well, I mean, it's all dependent on the numbers. And I always say that I'm never going to say this is what we're doing definitely for any amount of time. But I think a reasonable frame to put forward now is to say, with ASA, let's do 2 rotations of this 3 weeks. And at that time, just, listening to what I'm hearing from our CDC, looking at where we are in winter cycle by then, looking at vaccinations, looking at lots of factors. ASA is the place where I think we can, because of the protective factors that are there with potting, we can begin to continue this incremental moving green as long as we remain green. So I see as March 15th as a good kind of goal to say, this would be what we're trying to work toward. That's what I see as a good kind of frame to put forward.
Have we thought about, instead of 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and get them back 2 weeks sooner if things allow at the beginning of March?
Well, I haven't, but that's not to say that, we couldn't. I think 3 weeks gives kind of a sustained schedule for people and gets us to that February break, and then the week, and then another group comes in after the February break. It kind of works well with the upcoming calendar and break and moving a group out, bringing another group in. So that was the thinking. But, any plan can be accelerated or decelerated depending on conditions and data. So, this is the one that we felt held promise for all of the factors we've mentioned, but there's nothing magic about 3 weeks.
I almost feel bad even asking you to talk about March right now. It's so far away in the way the numbers change, but it's good to process things through a little bit and have options on the table. So anything else people want to add on this? Do you have another topic under COVID, or are we ready to move on?
I guess I'm hearing consensus around option A, and depending on, the briefing on the 15th, we'll survey families really at all levels based on kind of the ASA plan, the middle school plan, and then the high school will kind of be a more open survey, given uncertainty there about the next step. Does it sound like the right next step to the board?
I just want to go on the record, if it's not already clear, that I think this option does a pretty significant disservice to our 4th and 5th grade students.
I would agree it does. I still think we have to make choices though. But noted.
Yeah, I think it all depends on what happens on March 15th as to what the next phase looks like. But if I take both of these models out with what I see happening with option A and potentially March 15th being able to bring students back full time, I think we get, uneven either option. I think it's optimal would bring all students back, obviously. We're making choices around and I think, I've heard lots of feedback about equity and, the equity consideration is nuanced. I think if we're looking for equal time, that's a different conversation than what's equitable for students. And so I don't think equitable means every student has an equal number of days of full-time attendance this year. So I think if we're thinking about equity, there are a lot of other nuances that go into that decision making, which is what we've tried to do. So ready to move to budget? Yes, ready to move?
Yeah, ready to move on to the budget timeline. You're cutting in and out a little bit, Meredith. I don't know if there's
Am I?
anything to fix on that.
Sorry. Is that better?
Sounds like it.
I put in the board packet the budget development timeline. Lynn and I met based on our typical timeline for budget development. We have been told to expect our ED, at least our preliminary ED 279.
You're still cutting in and out a bit.
I'm cutting out. I didn't bring my.
I don't know if it's echo or not.
Am I cutting out for you over there?
Yeah.
I might have to go get another headset. Is that any better? Oh, here comes Meredith to the rescue. Thank you. So I think you can probably hear me. There's not much different about this than typical. You can see that, and I've heard the principals talk about where they are. They're currently soliciting budget requests from their staff and putting that together. We are working toward bringing the board a preliminary kind of is that better? A preliminary high-level kind of cost center impact report of what we see initially in the budget figures at the February 2nd meeting. And then February 23rd, more of a kind of full, you'll see the full, more of a full look at the budget. Hopefully we'll work toward a typical referendum timeline of June 8th. That's the timeline that's expected this year for the budget for the state referendum date. So backing up from that to look at when we needed to have our annual budget meeting, and then from that when we needed to have warrants signed, you can see that it looks fairly typical. Last year was quite different than normal. I'm not sure what the next, as we've just talked about, months will bring. But certainly, what happens in Augusta around subsidy will be a big part of kind of knowing how hard this work is going to be this year. We've been told to expect reductions. The kind of word we're getting is they've been working to protect this year's subsidy and try to not have curtailments. They're still thinking they'll be able to finish the year without having curtailments. We'll plan on asking the commissioner that again at the meeting this week we have with her. And then we have a MSMA workshop later in the month that the DOE is coming to give us more information about subsidy. But, you know, we put a fairly large contingency amount in this year's budget to be prepared in the event of subsidy. And so as we look at next year and learn more about how we might be able to finish this year, I think, you know, we'll have some decisions to make about how we handle potential reductions next year in subsidy. You know, that CARES money, depending on how that comes through, can help us with some of our, you know, needs that we see into the future as we look at our data and determine what we want to do in response to that data and how we want and need to continue to support our schools and students and staff as we transition from potentially where we are now into next year. So I see, you know, a lot of uncertainty around our budget situation and needs, but I also see us as being in a little better position than other places, given our enrollment did not see the decline that other places did. We still don't really know how they're going to address that. But I feel probably less nervous than most about that particular aspect of subsidy. So in looking at the budget development timeline, one thing I did not put in yet was any kind of collaborative town council discussion. I think we can maybe wait and see what happens with subsidy and how big a challenge we have to determine, you know, how we want to handle that. It's probably, you know, we haven't done it. I think we didn't do it last year, given everything that was going on. I think we might have done it the year before. We skipped a year at some point. So, I mean, we might want to set up something via Zoom, but maybe we can get a little further in the process and just begin to see how things are shaping up and decide what might make sense around that. So do you see anything in the timeline that you have questions about or any budget topics you want to bring up that we should be thinking about?
Meredith, I assume they gave you no more than that expect reductions. No more context than that. Is that accurate?
Right. Zero additional context right now, except to, you know, that they've been charged with reducing the education budget. So districts should expect to similarly have to reduce their budgets.
I can only speak from a small, tiny sliver of experience here as a small business for 25 years, but I can share that my overall revenue was down close to 40% for 2020. So that is what ultimately funds the state, I think. I don't know that this ever, I know they can print money or the feds can print money, but I don't think I'm alone. Obviously, lots of business have closed. I don't know what they're reporting as far as tax base down, but that you know, that's what I pay tax on, obviously. So I think, do we go into this kind of business as usual, or do we go into this figuring that whatever the state is suggesting they're going to be down in revenue, or this probably are, I don't follow the state markup. You probably do, but are they already making predictions as far as how far revenues are going to be down? And I know we can't actually, Mark again would maybe have the best idea what the feds might print and give to us, but do we walk into this thinking business as usual? Or because as far as I know, this hasn't hit academia, which I think a lot of this board is on, a lot of this town is connected to. So, but it might. I trust that it could at some point trickle into how universities are. It has to, I guess, trickle into how universities are funded. So, I think a lot of people are operating still under the assumption that, hey, I haven't seen any fluctuation. I'm just not sure that doesn't seem like a very sound practice for us to be starting out on, because it can't continue, I don't think.
Leo, I mean, my take on this, I mean, obviously the economy is in dire straits. You know, not once every 5-7 year business cycle straits, but something much more extreme than that. And I think that affects us on the revenue side. That also affects us just, you know, ethically about trying to help out our community with taxes to the degree we can. But my take on the budget process, and to answer Meredith's original question, is I think this looks fine as it stands, but there are just so many variables that are unknown at this point in time. I would identify as the big three is whether the federal government does state and local support. And, you know, Mark could dive into a lot of the, you know, what happens tonight is probably part of that story, but it's not the only part of that story in Georgia. But state and local support from the federal government is a big piece of it. You know, last year was an amazing year. They came out with ED 279 in February based on the governor's budget, and then it passed, and that number was the number, you know, the number in February was the number in June. But I remember I think it was 2 years before that, the legislature was fighting with each other, and they didn't even have a final number for us to work with until what I guess it was more like 2 or 3 years ago. It was just 4th of July when they finalized the budget. So I predict that this is not going to be a year where whatever the governor's first cut budget is, which is probably what's informing the ED 279, and early February is going to be the final budget. I imagine there's a lot of horse trading that's going to be happening in Augusta this year. So, you know, there's the state budget, there's the federal, state and local aid, and the other big unknown is how this, you know, chunk of money that's in the stimulus that already passed, how that gets translated down to us. The state has a lot of choices in that. And there's, you know, even once the budget's determined, there's big questions on the ED 279 formula. How much are they going to hold schools that lost students this year harmless versus how much are they going to give money to the schools that have students in them right now? You know, as Meredith noted, we actually grew a little bit, but a lot of districts around us have seen 10% drops, and that goes right into the ED 279 formula. So they may be changing the formula too. I just think all we can do is have the conversations, do the groundwork, come up with plan A, plan B, plan C. You know the tools in our toolkit or the arrows in our quiver. And then we're going to have some really intense discussions probably in May to get this thing finalized. Because I don't know the right metaphor, but the ground is so uncertain this year. Feels uncertain every year, and it has been fairly uncertain several years, but the ground is just so uncertain this year, you know, and I don't want to start cutting people's jobs if it turns out that we don't have to do that. I don't think any of us want to do that. But I really think we're just going to have a lot of discussions, look at what our options are, talk about the tools, both on budget cuts and the revenue side. And then we're just going to have this all come together when the information comes together, which I predict is going to be very late this year. That's my take on it.
Just to follow up on my original comments, that I think it's going to be important that we see kind of pretty clearly additional funds and additional expenses and additional positions that the CARES Act. And so I think those need to be clearly identified so we know what paid for what this year, because there's all sorts of stuff going on. I think that's, you know, the permanent subs and all of that stuff. I think it would be very helpful to see what we did extra, where and how we paid for it, you know, tied to the funds. Assuming that if there are cuts, obviously that those types of things are going to be on the front burner, I assume, but maybe there'll be reasons that they're not, but I think it would be helpful to see that and understand that.
I agree. I mean, the first place to look is to unwind the temporary things we did for COVID. Of course, that assumes COVID's over by the summer, which I think people think is a chance, but it's not a guarantee. But I agree, that's certainly the first place to look. Any other thought?
Yeah, I was just going to say
Like
the
the
first of
timeline.
many discussions on budget.
Okay, if we're done with budget, I don't think we have any nominations.
We
Or
do.
were there? Okay.
Yes, there are two. They were just oversights previously.
All right. So I would make a motion to approve the co-curricular nominations as presented. Is there a second?
I second.
And just for people's information, the nominations are both the middle school, girls A basketball team, Chad Kirkpatrick, girls B basketball, Tracy DeShane. Any discussion? We'll
Great
go
to
ahead and
have
vote.
these veterans back on the court.
Agreed. We'll go ahead and vote. Aaron,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Leo,
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Okay, next up we have policies. So these are both second reads from our meeting in December. So the policy committee has not met since December, but there wasn't any feedback. So these are just the same things you saw in December, and they're still supported by the policy committee. So I'll make the motion first and then I'll give the background. So I would make a motion to approve ACAB and ACAB-R as presented, recognizing the second read and adopting as policy. Is there a second?
I second.
So you may recall ACAB and ACAB-R are in our non-discrimination section of policies. These had to be revised in the context of changes to Title IX at the federal government. And basically, we used to have what I would call a unified approach that worked across state and federal law and Title IX guidance and regulation. At this point, that's not possible. Or maybe the only way it's possible is if we adopted the Title IX rules, but even that I think probably wouldn't work. So we effectively had to split the policy into two sections, Title IX issues versus non-Title IX issues, which is what you see here. Meredith did most of the work on it, and it's been through the policy committee, I think 3 times at this point. So it's been pretty well discussed, and I think the policy committee is pretty happy with where it's at. I don't know if there are any questions or if we're ready to vote on it.
The only question I have is I assume legal counsel's been involved in reviewing it.
This started from Drummond and Woodsum. They gave us draft language for it, so yes. And the reason this is separated from the ACA and ACAA is there was one thing the policy committee wanted to go back to Drummond and Woodsum on, so that's been completed as well. Anything else? All right, we'll go ahead and vote. Aaron,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Leo,
Aye. Aye. Sorry.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. All right, the other policy we have to bring forward is GBEB, G-B-E-B. Staff conduct policies vary all over the state. Some of them are very detailed. We don't particularly have that. We have some expectations set forth in computer use and interactions with students. That's where most of that exists in our policies, and those aren't changing. The reason we're introducing this now is there is a change state law that if an investigation of a serious matter of a staff member was started, and it lists serious matters here, use of alcohol, physical and emotional abuse, etc. So really serious things. And they resigned before the investigation completed. Nothing went on their permanent record. The investigation completed and had a finding in this area, it went to the DOE and it was kind of recorded permanently if they tried to get another job in the state. But if they resigned before the investigation completed, there was a loophole and it didn't go in the permanent record. And so this is now closing that loophole. This is a result of change in state law. One half is on the hiring side, where we now check with all employees that database that already got passed in PCF. And this is the other half. We just didn't have a good policy to place this anywhere. And the second and third paragraph are basically straight out of state law, so there's not really a lot of choice or debate about it. This is the place where we say we will report to the DOE database if an employee quits in the middle of an investigation in one of these serious matters. So that's where this policy comes from. So it's again a second read. We've seen it before. The policy committee is happy with it. So I would make a motion to adopt after a second read policy GBEB. Is there a second?
I second.
Any more discussion or questions? All right, we'll go ahead and vote. Aaron,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Leo,
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Next up, we have cost center transfers. So this is in preparation for the audit. You may recall that we can transfer, there's, I think it's 11 cost centers, although I forget, it may have changed with food coming back out of it, but about that many cost centers, and budgets within cost centers are purely an internal administrative matter, or if they're big, they come to the board by our policy. But transfers between cost centers, the budget is approved by the town at the level of cost centers. So transfer between cost centers is a more serious matter. It happens most years. And our auditor always tells us, you know, and there's some laws on limits to how much you can do that in normal times. It's been relaxed during COVID. We're within the limits. But our auditor always likes us to officially adopt transfers between cost centers. So that's what we're doing here. Just trying to, is that in the board folder, Meredith?
It is. They've given us the language of the motion here.
Would you like me to make the motion?
Sure, I'm still, what's the name of it? Oh, budget transfers, sorry, there it is. Yeah, go ahead and start, Jake.
I move to approve the allowable budget transfers between cost centers recommended by the auditor to remove the over expenditures in 2 cost centers. Decrease regular instruction, 47,698, increase system administration, 47,603, and increase debt service, $95.
Thank you, and I will second that. If anybody's checking, those numbers balance out. This is not an increase to the budget, just a movement between cost centers. Any other questions? We'll go ahead and vote. Aaron?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Leo?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Next up, we have subcommittee reports. Policy Subcommittee has not met since the last board meeting. We have canceled the meeting this Thursday to allow another meeting to occur. So we'll be back to our regular schedule in February, first Thursday of February. We're going to return to reviewing policies, systematic sweep through policies. We're going to start, I think, at policy DJ and go continue alphabetically. And the only other policy on the table is a new policy related to district-owned vehicles, since we now have district-owned vehicles. So that's what's on the agenda for February. Anything for UTC?
Yeah, we had a meeting. I won't go into a lot of it, but I did want to acknowledge that they had the CTE Teacher of the Year, Miss Peterson. And so that's pretty amazing and quite an honor for her and for our students who get to access that kind of education. So thanks to them.
Erin, I don't know. Do you know what topic she teaches?
Yeah, she's the business teacher there. She actually teaches 12 courses like through EMCC that the students can take at UTC, so they can actually like graduate with an associate's degree. So it's pretty amazing.
Cool, thank you. Spruce is next.
Nothing on the radar as far as a future meeting.
Okay. Curriculum Subcommittee meeting. I don't think we've met since the last board meeting, but we're meeting next week. Anything to add to that, Meredith?
Well, we had at our last meeting just some updates on the evolution of the conversation at the state level about assessment and this pending new assessment system, and then the long-term plan for development of interdisciplinary assessments that can capture a more authentic picture of how our students are actually doing. And then in addition to that, we are excuse me, exploring the creation of a Wabanaki studies work group here in the district. And that conversation is starting this week.
Great. Yeah, I stand corrected. I think you're right. We did meet since the last board meeting. So that's a good summary. And facilities and building committee. People who are watching are probably clearly seeing signs of things happening. They're starting to put up the iron for the auditorium. So that's the last thing to get framed out. So that's exciting. Lots of down on the details about conduits that get cut and where to move conduits and things. We had a meeting with the architects this morning, but I think those are the big things. I think we did want to share with the board the interior drawings that we've seen now that the finish committee has chosen the colors. Did you want to do that, Meredith, or shall I do that?
Either way, we have them in the shared folder, and Rachel shared them with those of you who have joined us tonight. I'm happy to share my screen and we can just kind of explain some things quickly. Does that sound good?
Yep. Yeah, I think they're cool. We should actually put them up on the Zoom screen.
Okay. So you can see the this moves through. We had 3 finished committees, one for Asa Adams, one for OMS OHS, and then one for the auditorium and band and music room area. So this slide deck really goes through the selections that each of those groups selected, but we did try to have some threads through as we were looking at things like, floor tiles and casework and such. So this first set of slides looks at the 2 music rooms and the associated storage and practice rooms in between. So, it's kind of, if you are looking at this, you have to kind of get a lay of the land a bit. So in looking at first the flooring, you can see there's kind of in each room, you can see that the rooms have kind of an accent flooring area. That's the teaching wall, and that has a dark gray accent here and then light gray. And then the hallway out here has an even lighter, and it's similar to what we have in most spaces for kind of our hallway tile. And then in each room, there's also casework. You can kind of see these are the cabinet casework color choice, and then the countertop choices. In our music rooms, we have a lot of acoustic kind of features to help with acoustic sound control. So we have panels in the band and choir room. And so we have some different colors to create kind of a vibrant space in those areas. So we can have fabric colors, different fabric colors. And so we were able to choose 3 fabric colors. So you can see, or we were able to choose different fabric colors, but we decided in the band and music rooms to not go crazy and have kind of a mosaic of colors on our acoustic panels, but to have something that kind of was a flow through of school color. So we chose this burgundy color for our acoustic panels to go with kind of the paint on most of the walls. That's kind of that white duck. It's a very neutral color. And then on the accent wall, which is the teaching wall, to have that darker gray. And so you can see that with the floor tiles, and it's a nice color palette. Same in the music rooms. And you can kind of see where these are. If you see the, sorry, I'm just getting my bearings here. The band room south finish is that's the teaching wall side. So you can see that's the kind of the boards up on the front, and then it has the acoustic panels up at the top, and acoustic panels will kind of circle the room there. And then there's the door that leads to the kind of hallway that connects the 2 rooms with the practice rooms in between is also shown here. Similar design for the music room with the acoustic panels around the top. The practice rooms that are in between the 2, we decided to kind of have some fun with the color choices here and have it be a space that that kids, felt was a inviting space and something that kind of set them apart. So we went with iris and blue spruce. So one room will have the iris panels, one room will have the blue spruce. And they kind of like the idea of saying, you can go to the purple room or the green room to kind of set them apart as well. In addition, we have this, the silver color that will also be an accent on some of the panels in those rooms. I don't think the black and white photo does justice, so we'll skip that. I think there's more coming up that shows the colors. But you can see kind of the spirit of the way the design works from the stage view here. But kind of skipping down, the lobby was another area where we had to make some choices here. Just to get your bearings, this is the back parking lot. And so these doors are the existing doors that go into, can you see my computer cursor? Okay, that go into the gym area and the hallway. So there'll be another set of doors right here that go into the auditorium. So you can enter from this way or this way. And so the lobby area is going to have a display case on one wall. There'll be kind of the opening into the soundproof air light lock corridor that leads into the auditorium. And then a door into the hallway. There's some natural kind of wood wall coverings that will be on the top of the or in one section of the lobby area, and then paint as an accent to that. And then the wood kind of plank flooring will be the rustic oak dark gray. This white oak grain wall covering is kind of a thread into something that's a feature for an acoustic panel in the auditorium. So that's going to be a kind of a nice warm tone that will accent nicely with we wanted it to kind of look like you're walking into Orono schools with the kind of maroon paint when you walk into that space. So we like that color palette. The auditorium, trying to get to the color pictures because it's really easier to see. So I just want to point out the wall area where you see the kind of the warm oak will have that same wood grain wall covering. That's an acoustic feature as well, but it's not the fabric covered panels. There are fabric covered panels, but the wood grain is kind of makes a contrast to that to have a different kind of acoustic covering that's a warmer feature there. So you can see the walls will have both these kind of spaghetti like the AWP1 panels in the middle of that page. Those are kind of that hard spaghetti like covered panels that you can paint any color. They aren't fabric colored. We'll be painting those with a domino paint, and then the carpet will be frozen tundra. And then you can see the color palette we have for the seats. They suggested it to not be monochromatic, that it would have simulate kind of having an audience there as students were performing if you didn't have this monochromatic kind of sea of seats that were sitting empty. So to have this kind of more interesting combination of colors, they were wanting to be a little more bold with their choices than we were comfortable being. So we kind of kept it in this family of grays and purples to maroons. There was initially some greens in there, and we didn't really love that color combination, so we kept it more in a more stable color family, we felt. So you can kind of see the mock-up here. We felt like also this kind of diverse seat color set really was more inviting for our younger students. This is a K-12, pre-K to 12 space. We wanted it to kind of not feel so formal as well. So having this kind of fun variety of seating choices would be more inviting as well for our younger students using the space. So you can see this from the back. You really can see those wood acoustic features, the wood wall covering acoustic features here. We will have kind of the burgundy curtain to frame the space. And you can see, you always want the back of the stage to be black, and it has all the traveler curtains that are also black. There was also a lot of discussion about our kind of apron down here of the stage. Initially that had wood tones, but especially our artist, and theater and music professionals who were on our committee really felt like that needed to be black as well. So there wouldn't be distraction of, people sitting in front of it like an orchestra pit that kind of drew the eye away from the shadows that might be created against a lighter apron. So decided to keep that all black. We had to look at restrooms and design for the tile. We came up with this as something, actually, we did not do this one on the right. Not sure why we have all of these in here still. We chose, which one did we choose? I think we chose this one. Now I'm looking at all these, I can't remember. I think it's this one on the left. We definitely did not choose the Minecraft bathroom. But I think some people would have thought that fun, but we decided not to choose the Minecraft bathroom. We chose this one on the left. And it's going to have, this is the flooring, the tile flooring. When you get, oh, this was just the auditorium. Huh, I'm sorry. There was something that had the rest. I'm going to have to go into find, I thought I put the one in there that was all of them. Sorry. Okay. Oh my goodness, yes, I have it here. Building committee. It was the December meeting, right?
The December building committee, those were the slides that had all the nice
Oh yeah,
elevations.
sorry, here we go. I think I took the long way around to that. I apologize, but that was hopefully interesting to you. But here's something that is a little more.
Gives you a feeling of what the finished committees went through in any case.
Right. So this is the Asa Adams cafeteria space. Yes. Okay. So this one is, if you're looking at, if you're standing in the hallway where we tore down the 2 classrooms across from Ms. Cavazos and Ms. Berglund's room, across from there now, where we tore down the 2 classrooms that actually used to be their rooms, that's where the new cafeteria is going to be. And so where you see this little guy standing here is kind of where that hallway, closest to that hallway. So these are the bathrooms. And then this is the south wall, no, it would be the west wall of that room. So that kind of goes to, like, faces the hill. So this side of the cafeteria faces the hill, so you can kind of get your bearings. So you can see these kind of drop pendant style lighting are a nice feature, and they've picked some nice warm colors for this space. You can see over here, I feel like this is missing information. That this is not it either, is it? No, this is a really old, I'm gonna have to stop because I don't have the right document. That is not right at all.
Maybe we can just pique people's attention for next meeting then.
Yeah, apparently so. No, I was showing people on this committee are probably, who are on this call, going, wait, Meredith, that is not what we agreed to. So I'll have to find the other 2. What you saw for the auditorium are the auditorium selections. The selections for the cafeteria and cafeterias and classrooms we'll talk about next meeting. So yes.
Great.
But we also have been dealing with, several issues. Like one of the ones with the building project is the back parking lot. We needed to get some lighting there pretty quickly. And so we did a temporary solution while they worked on a more permanent one. Well, it's permanent, but temporary still. The final lighting features won't be put in until toward the end of the project in the back parking lot. But they have a better solution for us that they have been working on. And so that was a really urgent need that they were quite responsive to once we pointed out the need there. So lots going on. Brent's busy with lots of, discoveries that they come to him and need more information. So definitely in the thick of the project right now.
I just want to ask, is there any talk of the ASA gymnasium flooring changing at all, or is that anywhere on a short list, long list, or anything like that now?
No, that's not in the project. It's just being left as is. Once the cafeteria gets its new space, then it's just a dedicated space. The kitchen conversion is something we removed from the project when we were trying to do cost savings. So that's something that we will have as a self-managed project to do once the Bowman project is finished.
Kitchen conversion.
At ASA to move
using
the
that
current
room for something.
change. Right. Yes. We had plans for that room and would like to convert it into a space where we can have another music space.
Yeah, I just tried to find the file too. It's yeah, document management's pretty challenging.
I don't think we ever got a file with, or were shown anything about the ASA cafeteria, because I've never seen that. And what you just showed, I'd never seen. I found the document from December and it has the stuff from the auditorium and the high school, middle school cafeteria, but it doesn't have anything from ASA.
Maybe she just didn't share it with us. Maybe she just shared that instead of the whole, because they walked through the other spaces that day. So I need to go back and check my email to see if I just pulled in the wrong file or if we never got the whole file.
Yeah, well, we'll find it and bring it to the next board meeting because it is fun to see. The auditorium gave you a flavor of it, but the cafeterias, among other things, are still.
Yeah, the
worth
ASA
seeing.
cafeteria is not green, as I recall. That's what I was thinking. That doesn't look right. Lisa's on the call. She was in. Kristen. Yeah, it's not green, is it? No.
No, it's not
Yes.
green.
Okay. Phew. Okay.
All right, so Erin, should I ask you about the wellness subcommittee?
We haven't met, but I did want to take this opportunity to acknowledge Ben Jacobson and all the crazy amount of work he's doing this year. Just to keep like lunch. Everybody's doing a lot of work, but he's really had a lot on his plate with COVID, and he's doing a great job. So I just want to throw that out there.
Agreed. So next up, any other business from the board?
I don't have other business, but I have actually a circle back question regarding the budget timeline. Do we know, Meredith, if the annual kind of district budget hearing, is that going to have to be in person or can that be remote? I assume it has to be in person because there has to be the vote.
We've not received any information about whether there will be special allowances this year. The ones that were last year were really time bound. What was allowed last year was, I think, time bound to last summer. So we haven't heard an update to that. I assume they're probably wanting to wait a bit and monitor the situation to determine. I mean, you know, with June 8th or May 18th being our date, you know, we'll have to let some time probably and conditions emerge to determine. But there were places that did it last spring under the, you know, lockdown that we were under. So I'm guessing that they might expect that communities will find ways to move forward. They might, though, allow a Zoom forum somehow, since I think everyone's become more comfortable in this kind of mode. But nothing has been shared yet.
Yeah, I would guess they probably won't allow that due to the vote, although I don't know that. But I think we need to at least start thinking about how we might pull off kind of that kind of a meeting, you know, whether it's a, you know, setting up the middle school gym appropriately spaced or setting up, you know, I don't know how we could configure the tents we have, or, you know, if we needed to, or if it's, hopefully it'd be a nice day, we could just do it outside distance with an amplification system, but at least think about it in case. I mean, hopefully by May, we don't have a lot of the restrictions we have in place now, and we can do it at least somewhat normally, but that isn't a guarantee by any means. So I think we should at least think about how we might proceed.
Just for completely, I guess, revisiting another topic, a topic as well, as far as space at ASA Adams. If they come back in next week, turn around and say we have funds available, the CRF funds and the child care funds, could that potentially be used for another portable to add space for ASA that would get us back to all kids on site?
Yeah, I don't think that's feasible for a couple of reasons. One is space to put a portable at this point. We have 2 in place right now, and those were tight. It's quite a process to get a portable in place, as we learned last time. And I think availability also is something that is difficult at this point to get on a short timeline. So, I mean, we've looked at that and considered it last summer, but really determined it wasn't feasible given what we already had on site with our 2 portables for our construction project.
I mean, I do think your basic question, Leo, is right. If we could somehow magically find space that was within, reasonable teaching accessibility distance from the current ASA, that would open up a lot of options for us. But I had the same thoughts as Meredith did about the portables. Unfortunately, there's not much footprint left, and there's gravel and electrical, and it's not something we could bring in for a couple of months very easily. But if fire trucks wanted to park outside and give us the firehouse, I'm just kind of spouting off randomly here, but space is the limiting factor. So creative thinking about space is definitely worth trying.
Thanks.
Any other business to raise?
I did find the right document. Do you want me to show you quickly?
Yeah.
I can show you quickly. It's embedded in a larger document, so Rachel will have to work her magic and pull it out so I can post it for others to see. So let me just share. Yep, here we go. So what you're seeing now is the Asa Adams cafeteria. So just as a reminder, I was saying, like, this is the hallway that leads from like the existing cafeteria is right here. So this is the interior hallway, and this would be an entrance area. And the cafeteria, there's an interior bathroom. There's also another hallway single user bathroom. And then this we're thinking is the exit area. And this is the kitchen and service area. So those lights that we showed you, and then the columns, you can see they have this nice kind of, they don't have it listed what the color name is, but it's a nice kind of aqua greenish color, and then the navy or bluish around those pendant lights. You can see the floor tiles have some interesting color variation in them, and then have some VCT kind of alternate spaces as well. When you look here, you can kind of see how all those work. The floor tile is around, looks like the bathroom area, and then out in the common area, you can see these 2 accent tiles that are used. And then I think further down, you can see the restroom area. So this is the kind of, is this in the hall? This is outside the cafeteria, I think, right, Kristen, Lisa? This is the hallway side. I think so, because the interior side looks quite different. If you look here, this is the interior wall, where this is the entrance to the bathroom. So you see this kind of arched tiled area. So that has this smoky gray lighter tile accent. And then you have these, the blonde wall protection down bottom, and then some tack boards. And then this is a color choice, which is probably indicated somewhere. And then you can see the bathroom color palette is shown here, a nice relaxing color palette and fun colors. I think here you can kind of get a sense for these, columns, and then the pendants and how that looks with the blonde wall protection will be just a really nice, inviting, warm kind of space. And lots of natural light here on this wall. So that'll really be a bright space. It's a lot brighter than we have in our current space. People are going to be super excited about this bathroom, I have to say. I think ASA school community is going to love having a bathroom space inside the cafeteria. And also, you know, this hand washing sink that's kind of in the communal area is really a nice feature. So students don't have to go all the way in the bathroom unseen, out of supervision to wash their hands. They can do it right here in the common area. At the middle school, high school, you can see, so this is kind of the same entrance right here, but it just gets extended a lot further. As you recall, the cafeteria kind of common space really goes almost to the back of what was the stage. And then the kitchen is where the band room was. You can see the new vestibule we're building when we're tearing down the breezeway, and there'll be a nice new vestibule there. So you can see the high school, middle school paint palette is similar to the auditorium. We had the benefit of looking at their work when the auditorium committee was meeting. So we tried to kind of have some common threads there. So you can see the paint palette and then see here how it all comes together. Some interesting kind of use of shapes and design on the walls to make that space an interesting look. There's tack boards and nice windows. The seating in this space is going to be really nice. Students are really going to like that because there are going to be lots of different types of seating, high top, kind of tables with high stools, and then low kind of bench seating with chairs, as well as kind of the round tables that we've had like this. But you can see over here on the wall the different types of tables, and then here also the high tops, and then also back here. So different variations that are available. So you can see, a lot of design taking place. This must have, I wasn't on this committee, but lots of probably work to figure out this pattern. But I think it's going to be a nice space, and you can see kind of that rendering there of how it looks. Definitely a facelift from what we've had in place. And then that committee also had to look at the classrooms. I think ASA did as well, but they're not in this presentation. But this shows for the high school wing that was added on, kind of the palette of paints for, and it's very similar to what I showed you in the band and choir room in terms of the paints and the casework, color, and the tack board and the floor tiles. So yeah, this is the document I should have shown you. So it has the entire stuff here. So we'll get this posted so you can see all these on the website. Thank you to all the finished committees. All the groups met twice, and also in between looked at floor samples and our fabric samples and swatches. So a lot of deliberation, but really good thinking. All the committees had a quite diverse group. We've talked about that before, so I won't go over that again, but just again want to thank everyone who was involved in this process.
Great, thank you. Glad we found that. Any other requests for other business? Any requests for future agenda items? All right, we're back to public comment. Carissa, I know you, maybe we answered your question, but if not, feel free to jump in, or anybody else. Not seeing anybody unmuting. Last chance. Okay, we'll go on. So our next meeting is in 2 weeks at 6 p.m. Tuesday, January 19th. Same location, which really at this point means Zoom. And any board member have a request for information or follow-up? All right, the last item on the agenda is the executive session. I will say that we will take no votes after the executive session except for adjourning. So probably a good time to depart, but if anybody really wants to hang in the Zoom waiting room till we come out to vote to adjourn, you're welcome to do that too.